The Refutation of Man-Made Climate Change, a rhetorical analysis by Spencer Brock, Taylor Rately, and Sam Lewis. Our thesis: Obama is taking wrong actions over climate change. The author of the video, James M. Inhofe, supports this argument by presenting Dr. John Christie's related argument and evidence. All of Obama's wasted billions in EPA's job-killing regulations are based on false data, inaccurate computer models, and the UN IPCC report, which has been thoroughly discredited.
Or whatever the climate is going to do. However, I suspect there will be some discernible negative economic consequences if energy costs rise. As more CO2 is released back into the atmosphere, there are benefits that have often overlooked. Most notable of these is the invigoration of plant life, on which
Dr. John Christie makes the point that no matter what legislation or regulations are passed by any government, they will not have a direct impact on the climate. Christie also brings up that the harsher regulations that are put in will also not affect the climate, but will undoubtedly affect the economic impacts of a country. The primary audience of this video is obviously American voters, but it obviously appeals to Republicans and opponents or critics of Obama. They are taking the opposite stance of Obama in a congressional hearing. They are trying to sway voters to their side so that Obama will get less votes in the next election. To summarize John Christie's argument, Obama unjustifiably attributes global warming to certain record high temperatures. The creator of this video shows by example that Obama is wasting federal money, hurting the economy, making unnecessary regulations, and spending unnecessary federal resources to combat man-made global warming, when, by Dr. Christie's argument, is completely wrong.
The recent decade was only, or actually less than half of that set in the 1930s, as shown in my written testimony.
Use this chart that I had?
It didn't.
Oh, the one
No,
that had,
no, it's a different chart.
Okay.
It's a different chart. Thank you, Senator.
This clip of Dr. John Christie provides historical facts to persuade viewers and gives an explanation of why surface temperature is a poor indicator of climate change.
And so on. Nighttime surface temperatures will appear to warm due to a complicated turbulent process, not the greenhouse effect. The bottom line is that traditional surface temperature is contaminated by such effects and is not an accurate indicator of greenhouse warming. When it comes to legislation or regulatory actions, there really is nothing that will definitively alter whatever the climate is going to do. However,
in the preceding clip, Dr. Christie uses the historical nighttime data from surface temperatures shown in the graph below to argue his point against global warming. He says that it is caused by a complicated turbulent process and that no matter what legislation we pass, the surface temperature will continue to rise.
and in mathematics and a Master of Divinity. He has served as Alabama State climatologist since 2000. During his time, he's worked with Dr. Roy Spencer to produce a global temperature data set from satellite observations. For their work, Dr. Christie and Spencer were awarded NASA's prestigious Medal for Exceptional Scientific Achievement in 1991. 5 years later, he and Dr. Spencer were recognized by the American Meteorological Society for their development of a precise record of global temperatures from operational polar orbiting satellites. An important matter, satellite data.
Ethos is defined as to convince an audience of an author's credibility or character. The preceding clip does just that. The speaker introduces Dr. John Christie and his credentials. To name a few, he was a professor and climatologist at the University of Alabama. He was the 1991 Medal for Exceptional Scientific Achievement for NASA and 1996 Special Award American Meteorologists Society. Logos is defined as to convince an audience by a use of logic or reason. Christie uses this as his main basis for an argument. He brings up many statistics, historical evidence from the 1930s, and the surface temperature graph.
that's an indicator that a nation is providing energy for its people, who then live longer, healthier, and more productive lives. As someone who's lived in Africa, I can say that without energy, life is brutal and short. So this is the goal of poor countries, to access energy. So I'll close with this unpleasant thought. Demanding a reduction in worldwide CO2 emissions without affordable, reliable alternatives means reducing the hope for prosperity of our fellow world citizens who are struggling to escape their impoverished condition. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chris. Now,
Pathos is defined as to persuade an audience by appealing to their emotions. Christie notes that with his experience in living with Africa, that using less energy makes your life more brutal. He says that in order to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions, we'll be reducing our prosperity and our length of life. In doing this, Dr. Christie falls down the slippery slope fallacy. Christie's conclusion may be slippery slope fallacy because he notes that the government is reducing hope for prosperity for certain people by demanding reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, two things that do not fully support his conclusive argument. Obama's war on fossil fuels is killing jobs and raising electrical rates. Higher energy costs drive up the cost of everything. The overall effectiveness of the argument of Dr. Christie. Dr. Christie uses sufficient ethos to provide credibility for his argument. He also uses logos to argue against man-made global warming throughout his whole argument. Although there is a logical fallacy where Christie relies on pathos, it does not detract from the logos and ethos of his argument. Dr. Christie has a valid argument as to why man-made global warming does not exist.